God willing, today we'll complete the Sikha of the Rebbe from Dvar Malchut that he said in 1991, Tafshin Nun Aleph, about miracles. And first of all, the miracle that happened in Gimel Tammuz to his father-in-law, that it was the beginning of him being released from Soviet communist prison, which was an impossible occurrence. Nobody ever got out of communist prison, especially when they were under the charges of treason, like he was, and it was already decided that he was supposed to have been punished with death, and miraculously he got out on the 12th and the 13th day of Tammuz, but that whole redemption just began on the third day of Tammuz, 10 days earlier. And so the Rebbe asked, why? Why did it have to be this process? The same thing is, there was a process of the sun standing still for Joshua, which that also happened on Gimel Tammuz, the third day of Tammuz. And that was just that assisted him in winning this battle that he had against these 5 kings. So the Rebbe says, why did it just have to be an assistance? Why couldn't God have just done the whole thing? The same thing as taking the previous Rebbe out of prison. Why did it have to be this gradual process? And the same thing we have also in this week's Torah portion. It says that there was an argument between all of the other Jews and Aaron, if he was really special, fit to be a special human being, the Kohen Gadol, or if maybe everybody is equally as special as he is. So Moses said, well, you want to find out, everybody take the heads of the tribes, each one take a staff, Aaron will take his staff, we'll put them in the tabernacle, and tomorrow morning we'll see what happens. And each one wrote his name on the staff, and sure enough, took the staffs out in the morning, and the staff that had Aaron's name on it, it had flowers and buds and fruits. So the Rebbe said the same thing. Why does it have to be flowers and buds and fruit? Just be fruits. Finish the thing. Why does it have to be this process? So the Rebbe said the whole purpose of God putting us into the world is that we should internalize the miracles that are happening. And that miracles should be part of our personality. That we should feel the amazing miracle that, first of all, that God is creating us and he's providing for us. But when we really start to appreciate God and the miracles that he's doing, and even though it's a very gradual way we see around us, but nevertheless, little by little, this will cause big miracles to happen really in this physical world. And that's the whole point, to bring godliness down into the world. And the Rebbe pointed this out by showing the difference between the letter Resh, which is in Korach, and the letter Tuf, which is in Chukat. The word Korach has a chet and a kuf in it, right? Korach, kuf, resh, chet. So it has a kuf and a chet in it. There's just a resh in the middle. The word Chukat, which is next week's Torah portion, also has a kuf and a chet in it. Chukat, chet, kuf, tuf. So the difference between them is just the letter resh and the letter tuf. Says the Rebbe, well, if you realize that the world was created from the letters of God, the letters of God's speech, so the letters are really more real than the world, right? You think that if you have, like, you win the lottery, and you win $1 million in the lottery, that's very nice, right? That's $100 million a week. That's an incredible. You can start businesses. Well, whatever you win, $100 billion, right? You're the richest person in the world. You have $50 trillion. That's pretty good. Well, it's absolutely nothing, zero, compared to one letter of creation. These letters that God creates the world from. So if so, the difference between the letter Resh and the letter Tuf is a tremendous difference. It's not just something that's on the paper, right? The letter Resh and Tuf are not a product of man. These are products of God And man is a product of these letters that come out of the letters. So what's the difference between the letter Resh and the letter Tav? Is the letter Resh, it hasn't got a third leg, right, on the left side. And letter Tav does have the third leg. And this corresponds to thought is the top line, speech is the right line, and the left one is action. In other words, it doesn't come into action. That's the whole point. Godliness has to come into action. Right? A lot of people write me and say, you're wrong, it's not right. That God is spiritual and it has to be spiritual, but the Bible is spiritual and everything is spiritual, and you have to spiritual, and the point of life is spiritual, and you go to heaven is spiritual. That's a big mistake. A very, very big mistake. And that's the mistake that Korach made. He wanted everything to be spiritual, not to bring it down into the world. As we learned in the Likutei Torah, he was a tremendously high spiritual person, and he wanted to leave it that way. So says the Rebbe, that's the whole point of it coming down into the world. And if the Rebbe said, here we got a really good example. The previous Rebbe, this gradual process that they did was only to bring it down into the world. If it would have just have been a miracle, right, and the Rebbe would have just gotten out in a second, so maybe it would be something like, going out of Egypt. The God took the Jews out of Egypt. They didn't appreciate it. It was just too unreal, too, out of the ordinary. The miracles have to be somehow or other in the ordinary, so that we see that everything is really a miracle all the time. So we could take an example, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. So the beginning of his redemption from prison was on the third day of Tammuz, 1927. And that only ended, in other words, he was only totally freed, but that's the day he was sent from prison to exile. So for sure he wasn't going to get killed. And then they let him out on the 12th or 13th day of Tammuz. The 12th day, because he was actually freed on the 12th day, but he only got his papers on the 13th. But said the Rebbe, that also was only the beginning, right? The final stage, and this is also not the final stage, is the fall of communism. Communism fell when it was 1990, 1991. Here, that's when the Rebbe is speaking here. I think it was 1990. In any case, communism fell, what was it, 63 years later. So that was a pretty gradual process. And of course, there's going to be the total redemption of all of the Jewish people and then of all the world. That's supposed to happen right now. So if it happens right now, that's already, 30 years afterwards? How long is it? 1990 to now is 2021. So that's already 31 years. That's a pretty long time. But if it comes right now, it'll be really late. But it's a process. Good. Maybe we can attach this to the month of redemption. What's the month of redemption? The month of Tammuz. The month of redemption, that's the month that the previous Rebbe got out of prison, communist prison. I mean, I don't know if we can really appreciate what the magnitude of this miracle that the previous Rebbe got out. Because communism was, I don't think there's ever been in the history of the world a system like that there was in Russia. I mean, every third person was a spy. Everyone was spying on everybody else. And the punishment of death was like nothing, sending people to, I'm talking about Stalin's Russia. After Stalin, it was also not good, but nothing like Stalin. Right? Communism, the intense evil of communism was incredible. And the communism was essentially a war against God. That's essentially what it was. It was a war against God in any shape or form. In other words, man is the whole thing. The government is going to make sure that every man receives equally and every person works, according to the bill, all these promises that they made. But to kill a person over there meant it was no problem, because killing a person, everyone that didn't agree 100% with Stalin was an enemy of all mankind. It had to be exterminated, like some sort of a scorpion or something, just a dangerous, like the corona, something, right? The corona. I mean, the corona, if you ask me, it's the same, basically the same type of thing. But here it's just, it's everywhere. Everywhere. You can't get away from it. It's just, got to be afraid. Everybody in Russia lived in fear. Everyone left except for the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he inspired everybody not to be in fear. So he was like public enemy number one over there, right? If anybody else was to be killed, for sure he was to be killed. And he was sentenced to death. They got him. They sentenced him to death. There was no way he could escape. There was no possible way to escape. And miraculously, not only did he get out, they freed him. They helped him to get out. And not only that, all of communism itself fell, and Chabad is still here. This is an incredible, a miracle of this magnitude, but it happened in such a natural way that something like that is going to happen in the future redemption. Says the Rebbe, and so that's why it's called the month of redemption. Chodesh HaRevi, the fourth month. The fourth month, right? The first month is Nisan. First month is Nisan, and then there's Iyar, and then there's the Chodesh HaShlishi, that's Sivan, and then there's Tammuz. This is the fourth month. The fourth month is the letter Daled. Now remember, we made a big thing about the letter Resh, and how the letter, right, Resh, it's supposed to come into the world. The third line needs to come into action. Well, the same thing is going to be with the letter Daled. Let's see. This is the fourth month. The fourth month, it comes after in the power of the third month. The third month, that's when the Torah was given. B'chodesh HaShlishi, B'tzeis Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim, they went into Midbar Sinai to receive the Torah. But Dugmas Os Gimel v'Daled, like the difference between the letter Gimel and Daled, the first initials of Gomel Dalim, to give to the poor. Hashpa, giving of the month of the third month, into the, that's the month that the Torah was given, into the fourth month. The fourth month is, so to speak, poor. This is the month that in it was the end of the imprisonment of the Rebbe. That's poverty. Ba'ofen shezeh, in a way, bechinas dalim mitapech lechodesh hagula. So the previous Rebbe, you have to, and the in the beginning of the month of Tammuz, the previous Rebbe was still in prison. Only on the third day did he actually get out of prison. And the next 10 days, he was in exile in this weird place called Kostroma in Kazakhstan. So in the beginning, he was in exile. And that was Dalim, that's the month of poverty. But it ended up to transform the poverty into, right, that's the letter Dalit. Dalut means poverty. Into redemption. Yeshlomo, we can say that's the whole thing of the letter Dalit. Dalit, even though the letter Dalit means poor, and Resh also means poor. In Hebrew, the word Dalut means poverty, and Resh means also poverty. This is a rush and call, a poor person. Domot is similar, that both of them indicate on poverty. The word Dalit is from Dalut, and it's the first letter of Dalim, and Resh comes from a rush and call, like it says, a rush hasn't got anything. It's a sentence in what is in Proverbs. Let's see what it is. No, I'm sorry. Suppose in Shmuel. Also, Mishnah, here it is, Proverbs. It's also in Proverbs, right? Okay. Both of them also have two lines. The letter Dalit has a line on the top and like this, and the letter Resh also has a line on the top and comes down. Echad Lamaila, one is on the top that goes to the length, and one of them goes from above to below. But there's a big difference between the letter Dalit has a little yud in the back of it. See, the letter Dalit, it goes over this line, right? Can we make it bigger? Maybe we'll make it bigger this one. Huh? Does it work? Here. Oh. There we go. Here, let's see the letter Dalit. Can we see? Can we get a Dalit over here? One more. Oh. Dalit. See, here's oh, very good. Here's the letter Dalit. and it has a little thing that comes at the end. That's a dalet. So it only has two lines, the line of what we call speech and thought. And it's missing this thing of action. The resh is the same thing, but it hasn't got this little edge over here. It hasn't got the little edge. Okay. Okay. This little point that's in the Dalid, this shows on Bittul. According to Kabbalah, this is the level of Yesod. That's what it says. Yesod. This is attachment to God. This indicates that this is not just poverty and lowness. This is humility. Humility of holiness. The letter Dalid, this shows on a good type of poverty, that you realize that you really have nothing of your own, that everything you have belongs to God. This attaches a person to the highest levels. The letter Dalid also is from the word dilitani, means to raise me up. Right? We say this in every day in the Dam. Dilitani, you lifted me up. Al derech hamala, the tefillah la'ani, like it says, a prayer of the poor person. The prayer of the poor person means that he's humble. This is a good type of a poverty. Not a poverty that a person is poor, that he's lacking something. Exactly the opposite. A poverty because a person realizes that he is nothing, that he's a servant of the Creator. Right? A person, if he thinks he's a big something, so then he can't be connected to God. And that's what this says. That's the poor person, that he can really pray to God, which is not the case in the letter Resh. The letter Resh, it hasn't got this little edge on that bag. It's lacking this surrender to God. This is poverty because he hasn't got any connection to holiness. So paradoxically, it could be that the letter Dalid is a type of a poverty that brings to spiritual richness. And the letter Resh is a type of richness that brings to spiritual poverty. It's physical. Person is connected to the physical world, right? And he doesn't bring godliness into the world, that little line over here. The poverty is that he has no connection to holiness. So we see that person can be very rich, but he has no connection to poverty, to whole godliness at all. He thinks that he's the rich one, he's everything. So this is a poor person. This is the letter Resh. On the other hand, the person that has nothing whatsoever, but he's attached to God. He's a very rich person. He's a very rich person. He can be happy with whatever he has. And also, then when he does get $1 million, the $1 million doesn't control him. He controls the Alpis. According to this, Nitan, we can explain also the difference between the two letters. This letter Resh has two lines, and the letter Dalet has two lines. We said the letter Dalet, this is a humility of holiness, and Resh is a poverty, which is of egotism. Shnei kavim, each one has two lines. Barocha v'orach, length and from side to side and from up to down. Kol alim, kol adargos, this is the whole entire levels, all the levels of the order of the creation of the world. It's called Seder Ishtalshlus, from the highest levels to the lowest levels. In general, this is up and down, wide, right, width and length. Kav l'mayla, this line which is above on the top, right, the line on the top of the Dalet or on top of the Resh, this is what's talking about wideness. But on a level of, if it's a Dalet, this is the in this highness itself, hakava orech morech al hamshacha milamay lamata, and this shows on being drawn from above to below, lower levels. So in other words, the top shows the high part of man, intellect or whatever, and this line on the side here, that shows on the lower aspects of man. Shleimus avoda, complete service of God, is expressed in this, that both of these are together. That's this little point that's after the Dalet that we talked about. This little point over here. Maybe we have to get a different pointer. Now you can see a little clearer. Maybe this. See this little point over. Oh, there it is. This little point. This as it's drawn down into the world. When there are these two levels, namely the up and down, and it's surrendered to the Creator, it has that little point, and that's wonderful. But if it's missing that little point, the point of surrender that's in the Dalet, and is missing in the Reish, Hari, sof in the end, Chasar Az, it's lacking even the joining of these two aspects of themselves. It's lacking the whole idea of thought, the highest aspects of man and the lowest aspects of man. It's all confused until there's a separation between them that can bring to Russia poverty. Poverty, the opposite of holiness. There are a lot of people, for instance, that can stand up and give a beautiful speech about honesty, empathy, calmness, etc. And then immediately afterwards, something gets them mad, they cheat someone else. Right? Why is it? Because they're not really connected to anything above them. It's just all coming from them. So you're asked to give a good speech. So you give a good speech. He knows how to give a good speech. It depends on what people think about me. So I know how to give a good speech. I give a good speech about not getting angry. But it's all about me, right? So the speech is about getting, when I go outside and somebody makes me angry, then I get angry. It's got nothing to do with my speech, right? The speech was that people should like what I say. Just giving you an example. But real world in action, in other words, there's nothing above me. It's all for me. If a person has this little point after the Dalet, which indicates a surrender to the Creator, then what he says and what he does are the same. What he thinks. If a person has the surrender to godliness, which is outside of both of these other two lines. In other words, a person takes God into account, that there's a Creator and there's a reason for my being created. It's every single second. Then what happens, together with these two, then together with the two lines, right? There's a line on the top, that's like the highest aspects of man, then the lowest aspects of man, but there's a little shupchik, the little thing that comes out in the back. That's your connection to God, a little tiny thing. And we said, we remember in Torah, we talked about opening up a little tiny hole, like the hole of then, like the hole of a needle. Then, the shnei kavim. Then there can be the complete service of both kavim, shlemos achibur beineim. There can be a joining between your upper parts of your being and the lower parts. And that's the whole point of this month of Tammuz, the month of redemption. And especially the redemption of the third day of Tammuz and the 12th and 13th day of Tammuz, that the miracle which is above nature should come down into the nature of the world until this reaches even to the level of the Rosh, to the poor person, a person that is poor and he has no connection to godliness, poverty of the opposite side. This is the idea of the previous Rebbe being imprisoned and the people that opposed him. And this transforms even this, because we see the people that imprisoned the Rebbe, in the end, they helped to get him out. Right? Davka al Yadea, Yerida, only by means of, not only is this, can you withstand bad things, but even more, only by means of, God forbid, challenges and negative things happening, only by means of this can be revealed the true Imu Anochi B'Tzora, that God is with us in our difficult times. This refers on the essence of God, which is above all of levels of the Ishtalshlus. This is up and down. Therefore, even though that God is the highest, that there's nothing higher than him, and Tzora, difficulties are the worst thing that there can possibly be. Tzora, difficulties are the worst. God is pure good, and being in prison is the worst of the worst. But says the Rebbe, the only time God really reveals himself is Anochi B'tzora, in a difficult time. And the Rebbe said that we're now in a difficult time, all of us, because Moshiach is not revealing anything. Moshiach is here, the Rebbe is the Moshiach, and there's no redemption. What's going on? The world is upside down. Gam b'matzav zeh b'chinas acharayim, the lowest of levels, there is revealed this little yud, which is in the back of the daled, until it's drawn down. Even it's drawn down. The highest levels and the lowest levels of creation are permeated with the oneness of the creator of the universe. That's like I said, the previous Rebbe said that if you would give me all the money in the world, I would not go back to prison. It was even for 1 second, it was such terrible torture. But if you would give me all the money in the world to relinquish 1 second of the experience I had in prison, I wouldn't give it. It was so precious, the connection to God that revealed in me in order to withstand those difficulties. That was worth it was worth more than anything else. The connection to God. Because when a person is connected to God, so something eternal happens. A person lives his life, he makes money, it's good. You can make money like Nebuchadnezzar, you can have the whole world. You can have the whole world, but when you die, so what have you accomplished? Except you get your name mentioned. I don't know what Nebuchadnezzar gets from that his name is mentioned. But if a person does something eternal, as that thing is eternal. I mean, I don't know exactly what that means because we're not living. This life is covered by how do you say, by a veil of lies and deception. What we said before, there's a lot of things we can learn. There are in general in the service of man, whether a person, whether how we go in the world, whether our relation to God, whether our relation to ourselves, whether our relation to the world, whether as we're talking about Torah and the commandments, whether we're talking about things that are optional, how we eat, we sleep, and especially the connection to the Gimel Tammuz, to the service of the idea that the Rebbe Abraham really started out, but really came out big in spreading out Torah and Judaism, and especially spreading out the ideas of Hasidut. And especially there's a commandment that we have to take the staff of Aaron, and forever, it says it was put in the sign that God chose in Aaron, and it has to be the staff of Aaron. It has to be put together with the ark in this secret place that's underneath the ground that King Solomon says he built, that it's hidden there together with the ark and the tablets. What's there? The staff of Aaron, together with its almonds and its flowers. How the almonds and the flowers lasted for 2,000 years, I don't know, but that's more than 2,000 years, right? The almonds and the flowers was 3,000 to 300 years. So we have in there, as soon as the third temple will be built by Moshiach and they take out the ark, you're going to see a staff with 3,000-year-old flowers and fruits. So this miracle that happened with Aaron, so it must be something that's really eternal. It must be a lesson to us. Moving, so it's understood that from this there must be a lesson for us for all time. Kavan sin shekal lechabecha, that each and every Jew is one of the Mamlechet Kohanim, is the nation of priests, and not just regular priests, Kohen Gadol, big priests. How do you say the high priest, like the Rambam says, not just Shevet Levi alone, but any person that wants to take on himself and devote himself to God, he is holy of holies. So it's understood that every single Jew has to be something like, and take this lesson from the flowering and the fruits that grew on the staff of Aaron. Yotze perach v'yotze tzitz v'yigmol shkedim, that suddenly it grew flowers and buds and fruits. What can we learn from this? Af al pi, even though that in the service of a Jew there has to be kabbalatol. Kabbalatol, you have to accept the yoke. A Jew has to do what God says without questioning. No question whatsoever. That's a necessary thing. That's the basis of the service of God. We serve God. That's called fear. That's called fear. It's a healthy fear, right? We do what we're told to. even though you have to do that, but Shalamayla, which is totally above understanding and beyond any comprehension, because that's what God is, above comprehension. And you have to serve God in a way of zurizus. You have to do it quickly, which is also above any limitation. That's called bechol meodecha. And this reaches to the highest levels of godliness. You might think that that's the ultimate thing. That's basically what Korach wanted. Like it says, if God would say, forget about putting on tefillin and keeping Shabbos, just cut wood, chop wood. That's all you have to do. So if a person really believes in God, that's what he would do. But nevertheless, you might think that that's enough. Says there's a teaching from the Parach Mata Aaron, from that Aaron's staff grew up these flowers and etc. After your person has this foundation of Kabbalat all, I'm going to do whatever God says. I don't care what happens. I'm not asking any questions. But after that, that's just the basis. That's the, how do you say, the foundation of the building. But after that, it is necessary afterwards, hanakuda shalamaylam b'dirav hagbala litpashet. This little point, like we said, this little dalid, it of total surrender to God, unquestioning devotion and obedience. So that's just the beginning, and that's the foundation. It has to always be there. But that's, like we said, just the beginning. It has to spread out. It has to spread out into all the abilities of a person, until that all of his being and all of his nature and all of his personality and all of his talents, that's like the fruits. It says that there came out flowers and there were buds and there were fruits in such a natural way that the nature of us, our nature and our whole being, will be in a way of quickness, of joy, above any sort of limitations. That everything that we do will be in a way of the greatest quickness of all. Now, it's a very important thing, and I think that we have to really stress this, that everything the Rebbe is saying here, this is not just an additional thing or a nice thing, or wonderful Hasidic ideas. This is the way things are supposed to be. A healthy, normal human being is happy to do good. A healthy, normal human being, we're not even talking about a Jew. A healthy, normal human being does not want to steal. He does not want the light. He's not thinking about sex all the time and money all the time. And this is not, has all these obsessions. A normal human being wants to do what's right. He wants to do what's productive, what God wants. A normal human being. The 7 Noahide commandments, that just reveals what normal really is. Right? How a person can do what God wants. It says when a person, now let's talk about a Jew. A Jew has much more obligation to the creator of the universe. Like it says, we're a nation of high priests. When we feel who we really are, this should bring us a tremendous quickness, etc. If we're not doing it, it's a sign there's something wrong. We're a little bit maybe crazy, sick, who knows? That's the way the world is. The world is sick. Al derech zeh yeshno also limud ba'avoda be'enyani reshut shel Yehudi. There's also, I'm not talking about sick in a bad way. I'm talking about sick that it's a genuine excuse. The fact that that's the way, what can we do? That's the way God made the world. And the ideas of Chassidut are just to make us healthy. So we're talking about, let's even talk about the optional things that a Jew does. He goes to sleep, he eats. Those are not things that God commands us to do. And especially regarding to making money. First of all, we learn from the Parach Mata Aaron that this remains for all time, that one, and also it's something like that also together with the ark that was hidden, there was also a jar of the man. This is also l'mishmeret the dorotechim. This is also left for all generations. That when the Jewish people, they came and they complained to Jeremiah, the prophet, right? This is right in the end of the end of the first temple. He said to them, why aren't you learning Torah? Leave your work and asak Torah. They said, if we leave, we don't work and we learn Torah, how are we going to live? So Jeremiah took out this bottle of manna and he said, look, This is how your forefathers in the desert, this is how they got fed. Don't worry, God has a lot of ways to prepare you food. Now, he wasn't suggesting that they only learn Torah and they don't work. He was suggesting that the energy that they put into learning, to making money, that energy and interest they should put into learning Torah. And now the way that they treat the Torah, it's a side thing. That's how they should put into work. Similarly, we can also learn from this idea that the staff of Aaron grew these almonds, and they grew in a miraculous way, and they grew quickly. This is regarding to making money. Don't go crazy about making money. God provides the money. Your business is just a door. It's a vessel. On the other hand, it says, it says that God will bless you in everything you do. You have to do. That this drawing down the blessing of parnasa, of livelihood, in the net has to come in a natural way. And this thing of the growing flowers and buds, this is a natural process. It comes by means that a person does work, and he works, he serves God. I mean, he does that, he has a job, but when he has the job, he's really doing it in total faith with God, that the money comes from Hashem. He has a field, he plows, he plants, he does works in a normal world. He pays his taxes, he goes according to the city statutes, whatever it is. But the whole thing is permeated with the faith in God, that he believes in Chai Olamim, and he plants. A farmer says this makes a vessel to receive the blessing of God in a miraculous way. But a miracle like this that comes into the world, that everyone can see how that the nature of the world and even the non-Jews themselves will help the Jewish people, that they'll be able to make a livelihood. And then it'll be good for everybody. Just like we see this, especially in the last generation, that God blesses the Jewish people that they have. They put a lot less effort than they did in the previous generations. Right? The Jews in Russia, what are you talking about? People had to work for a week in order to earn enough money for a couple loaves of bread. Some people didn't even have bread. From this, there's also a special learning. Maybe there were rich people. Nowadays, everybody's rich. Everybody's rich, everybody has. And if you don't, at least you know somebody that's rich. From this, there's also a special teaching and spreading out the ideas of Judaism. Spreading out to how do you say, disseminate. That you have to go out and spread, encourage people to do commandments and learn Torah and learn Chassidut, especially after the redemption of the third day of Tammuz and the Yud Beis Tammuz. These three things are spreading ma'inotecha chutza, spreading out the deepest ideas to the farther away places. This is like the three things we had in the letter Daled. Yafutzu, spreading out, that's the little dot after in the corner here that sticks out. That's the connection to God. Ma'inotecha, this is your deepest ideas. That's the top line, the highest things. Chutza, that's the lowest, that's the line coming down. So a Jew, you, me, have to be connected to Hashem, and we have to spread the deepest ideas of the Torah to the furthest away places. How do we know what the deepest ideas of the Torah are? That's the Rebbe. The Rebbe, that's Chassidut. First of all, a Jew has to have Yafutzu. First of all, he has to be connected to the Creator. He has to realize that all of his being is Yafutzu. Namely, what? My whole being is just to advertise God. The Mifitz Elokus. The only reason you're alive, I have the song called the Elokut, right? Just realize that the only reason you're alive is just to advertise Elokut. The only reason you're here is just to advertise godliness. It's a way that's above any limitation. Before you even know what you have to go and spread out before you even know what Chassidut is. The first thing is you should have to have a desire. God wants you to help another Jew. That's what it says. The first commandment of the Torah is Pru Uravu, be fruitful and multiply. One Jew has to make another Jew. First of all, before you know what to teach and where to teach, first of all, you have to know that immediately when you wake up in the morning, even before you do any sort of prayers or anything, first of all, you have to know that your whole being is to spread out Judaism. Modeh ani lefanecha. I was only created to serve my Creator. I was created only to serve my Creator. Ein Pirusha doesn't mean that I exist. And this existence, that me, I have to devote myself. No, it means that all of my existence, the only reason I was created was only to spread out Judaism and godliness and Torah. A person could say, I can't do it. Jump over all of your doubts. Immediately, from the beginning, that's the reason you were created. And afterwards, then you can draw down all the details. Mainotecha, this is the deepest ideas of the Torah, that this purifies. A mayan is like a wellspring. A wellspring, it says, according to the laws of purity, even a little tiny bit makes a person pure, as long as it covers his body. You don't have to have like a regular mikveh. This has to spread these deep ideas that come directly from the Rebbe. These ideas from the Moshe Rabbeinu, from Aaron. You have to spread them outward. What does it mean, out? To the lowest places, to the lowest type of people. In other words, from this level of faith that he has, which is above understanding, until it reaches to the lowest places. People are outside totally of Judaism, outside of the shul, outside of chutzah. There's no further than it. Like the story which is known about, there was a chassid that was walking in the streets in Russia. It was after Farbrengen, and you have to have an identity card. And a soldier stopped him and he said, "Who's going? Kta idiot. Idiot. Who is going?" It's Russian. Kta means who, and idiot means going. Who is going? And he said, "Bittul idiot." He said, "Bittul, surrender to God is going." He said that God, it's so obvious to him that his whole essence is bittul, giving over to God. But interestingly enough, he said it in Russian to show that this bittul that he had, this surrender to the Creator, reached the lowest places, even into the Russian language, until it reached his whole being. Okay, let's just skip this because we haven't got time. I don't like to do that, but okay. So he says, a person might ask, come on, how can I possibly do this? The whole world is against me. Says the Rebbe says you should know the answer is the world is already ready. It's just waiting for you to break the ice. And the problem is just in your mind. Even if you do a little bit of light can push away a lot of darkness. What is the point? What are we supposed to do? Here, let's get this last one. Here we go. Now when Gimel Tammuz comes, and in the middle of these days from Gimel Tammuz to Yud Beis Tammuz, every year there's an additional holiness, an additional power to do what we said, spreading out Judaism to the whole entire world in a way of quickness, with the awareness that this world is ready and it will help you to do so. And especially when we're now in the time of the summer, when children are going to camps. Now we have to make a big effort that the children should go to camps which educate them about Judaism and Torah. Right? A lot of these camps are really fun. You know, there's the Chabad camps. There's also the other groups. They really know how to make the children, have a good time. Okay. The Elushim is asking, but the idea is it has to be teaching them Torah and the holiness of the commandments. Those people that educate children, that are working in educating, you have to really make big efforts and use this time and the ultimate quickness. Don't delay it. To use every single moment that's available to add the Yeladim anything about Judaism that you can. And it has to be done in a way of, how do you say, of alacrity and happiness. This is what we're also saying, Pirkei Avos, all the Shabbat of the year. Every place you should arouse people to do this if they can, especially on this Shabbat, to say Pirkei Avot in the 6 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot, and the 7 weeks after Shavuot until this Shabbat. And it would be very, very nice if you learned one Mishnah in depth. Similarly, it's a good custom that everybody should say a mimer, at least you should hear a mimer of Chassidut after the prayer Mincha this Shabbat. This Shabbat, we're talking about this Shabbat of Shabbat Korach. Say a mimer of Chassidut by heart. Have somebody stand and say it. May it be God's will that this will be in a way of chukat, like we explained before, and we're going to read the parsha of chukat in the Torah and Mincha of Shabbat, that it should permeate. Chukat means it should be carved in, that this feeling of being close to God and spreading out God and bringing the miracles, the feeling of the miracles of God into our personality, into our consciousness, that this should be carved into us. And then immediately, this will bring to the true redemption, that amitit v'shlema, that, like we say, that the Moshiach will come and he will sacrifice the 10th red cow, para aduma. That's the Melech HaMashiach will do right now. And he'll purify all the Jewish people. Amen Ken Yeratzon, our children, our elders, our sons, our daughters, all the Jewish people will go to the Holy Land, to Jerusalem, to the Holy Temple, immediately now. So the point of this is that miracles have to permeate us. We have to realize the miracles that God is doing, and it has to free us, that we bring others also to reveal the miraculousness of the creation, and even more, the miraculousness of the Torah and the miraculousness of the Jewish people. That our job is to make everybody feel these three things: the godliness, essence of godliness, the godliness which is in every human being, and the godliness which is in every aspect of the world, to bring it down into the world. The opposite of what Korach wanted, and the essence of what Moses and Aaron are supposed to do. That's the idea of Mashiach, to make godliness a household word, to feel God in everything that we do, say, and think. Have a good Shabbat with Mashiach now. Yechi Adonenu Moreno Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach L'Olam Bo'ed.